everybody, welcome to another lesson of learning Japanese. Today we're going to be covering a pretty broad topic. We're going to be discussing the use of the comma or the toten in the Japanese language. So the Japanese language has been using the comma for pretty much decades now, but relative to the basically entirety of the Japanese language, which is so much longer, that's really not that long at all. So the comma isn't going to be as established or refined in its rules basically as the, well, more natural Japanese aspects of the Japanese language. So as you might have been able to guess already, the comma and the period as well were imported into the Japanese language from Western languages, and as such the general function of it is pretty much the same as the way we use it in the English language. However, wherein the English language has pretty much really strict grammatical guidelines on when a comma must and must not appear. For example, if we have a conjunction word that's connecting two clauses of the sentence that aren't simple clauses, we're going to need a comma before the conjunction, whether it's and or but or whatever. If we're listing entities in a list, we're going to have to separate them by commas, etc. The Japanese comma is used much more liberally, to the point wherein basically the author of the sentence pretty much just gets to decide whether to use it or not. So with all that information so far, if we're native English speakers, then we have a pretty decent idea pretty much of where we can expect the Japanese comma to appear. Basically in the same places that they'd appear in the English version of whatever Japanese sentence you're looking at, but also maybe not. It's just if the author didn't want to do it, then he just didn't include it, even though he could have. So if you've watched enough of our video lessons, we've covered a decent amount of grammar patterns, Japanese grammar patterns that kind of act of sorts like conjunctions. Basically, they're phrases or words that act as phrases that, you know, connect the two halves of the sentence together. And you might have noticed that in the example sentences to those video lessons, we would occasionally have commas in them serving this function. So I'm going to pull one example sentence from one of our previous lessons and go over it in this new frame of mind, focusing on the comma usage. So our example line is going to be みんなの決定に従ってプロジェクトをやり直した. And this line is going to translate to basically, in accordance with everybody's decision, we redid the project, or we started the project over from the beginning. So let's break down the sentence really quick. First up, we have the word minna, which is just going to be the word for everybody, everyone, all of us. It's going to be part of a noun modification here with the other noun, kette, which means basically decision. So minna no kette is going to be decision of everybody, more naturally our decision or everybody's decision. And now the grammar pattern that we're going to be using as a kind of conjunction to connect the both halves of the sentence, nishitagate, is going to be something along the lines of in accordance with or following blank, and the blank here is going to be the noun of a noun modification that we just covered, minna no kette. So in accordance with everybody's decision or following everyone's decision. And now we just include the rest of the sentence, which is going to be projecto o yarinaoshita, which is going to be the word project, the direct object marker o, to mark it as the direct object of the verb yarinaosu, which means to do something over, and it's just going to be in the past form, so yarinaoshita. And that's the whole sentence right there. Minna no kette ni shitagatte projecto o yarinaoshita. And that's going to translate to in accordance with everybody's decision or our mutual decision, we restarted the project. So that's all the grammar behind the sentence. Let's look at the actual comma now. It appears right before nishitagate because, like I said, this grammar pattern right here, nishitagate, is kind of acting as a conjunction of sorts. It translates to in accordance with or following. So it's connecting the everybody's decision with the next part of the sentence, which is restarted the project. And so we're basically just using the Japanese comma right before it, as we would in an English sentence where we have a conjunction like that, and we would put the comma in front of it. Okay, so that's going to be our example. If you need some more of that, how the commas are used in Japanese for kind of conjunction-like phrases or words, we'll provide some more in the description and the official post for this lesson on our website, so check those out if you need some more brushing up. Those are pulled from previous lessons as well. Okay, so with all that covered, all that we've covered so far, we basically know half of what we need to know about Japanese commas. The next half is going to be the kind of tricky part. And so for our second guideline, we basically just have the concept that a Japanese comma can appear anywhere where the speaker would take a pause if they were saying the sentence out loud in a conversation. The kind of explanation for this is that Japanese commas can be used to basically separate elements in a sentence, and when we say elements, we pretty much mean any given element. So this is where the Japanese commas kind of appear more radically or liberally. At times, we can even place commas between kind of masses or conglomerates of kanji to avoid people misreading them. And so yeah, this is the category that will kind of catch us off guard, but when you just think of it, you know, maybe they're just taking a short pause in the sentence and that kind of makes sense. So like, even in English, if we actually turned conversational English into written form, there would be a lot of things that wouldn't exist in the written form, like people saying or like, something like that. You would put a comma after those kind of, you know, what do you call those, kind of like filler words or whatever, to kind of distract the audience while you're trying to think of what you're actually trying to say. If you were to transcribe those into written language, there would be commas after them, comma, and so it's kind of working like that. So we're going to go through a really simple example of kind of a comma appearing after a word you wouldn't expect. Our really simple example is just going to be kyo, comma, shigoto ga arimasu ka? This sentence right here is basically just asking, do you have work today? Or today, do you have work? Let's break it down real quick. First up, we have kyo, which means today. We have the word shigoto, which means work. Then we have ga aru, the grammar pattern that means to have, basically. It's going to be in the polite form, plus the ending particle ka to turn into a question. So ga arimasu ka is going to be, do you have? And so altogether, once again, kyo shigoto ga arimasu ka is going to be, do you have work today, or today do you have work? So where is our comma appearing in this sentence? It is actually going to appear after just the first word, kyo. And so this example might actually not be 100% representative of the whole, them just taking the short pause if they were saying this in real life. It is kind of half that, but it also kind of half has a grammatical subtext to it. Maybe they're saying today, and then they're like thinking of what they're saying, and then they say, do you have work? That might be half of it, but the grammatical function kind of that we have here is that it's kind of, the comma is kind of working in lieu of kind of the topic marker wa, because today is the topic of the sentence basically. When they say, do you have work? Of course, that whole question is revolving around the topic of today, because they don't care if you have work tomorrow or last year or yesterday. They want to know relative to today. And so that comma there is kind of working, kind of separating the kyo from the rest of the sentence, because it's the topic and it's kind of an important thing to highlight. So it's kind of working the same way as the particle, the topic marker particle wa would be working. But a kind of important note, even if we did include the topic marker particle wa in there, we could actually still include the comma too to do an extra separation. So yeah, that kind of displays just how, you know, liberal the Japanese comma is. If you want to include it, you can include it. So we are just about done with this lesson. One last thing that I do want to point out, if there is one kind of like pretty strict rule for commas, from what I've experienced, is that you'll need it if you use it in lieu of kind of quintessential Japanese elements. For example, probably the only example that I have, because this is probably the only scenario that I've come across that has this guideline, is that we know in Japanese, if we're kind of using a pure form of Japanese, instead of using commas to list things, we use the particles ya or to to, you know, list items like inu, ya, neko. That would be dog and cat. So if we wanted to use commas instead of that particle ya, we would have to use commas, which is kind of weird saying. So this is a case of like, you're replacing the Japanese grammar of ya as the particle to list things with the comma. So if you do that at all, you have to use the commas. You can't just say neko and inu next to each other, or inu neko without any comma or particle. So so yeah, that's kind of a rare case, and it's kind of common sense-ish. If you replace the Japanese grammar with the comma, then you definitely have to use the comma. You can't replace the Japanese grammar with nothing. So it's kind of common sense, yeah, but just worth noting there in case you come across it. So yeah, that is going to be the last thing that I think is worth mentioning. This is kind of an intro video, but on the subject of commas, I'm not too sure that there is too much to expound on. If I do come across more detailed information or more specific guidelines or actual established rules that I didn't know before, we'll make a follow-up video. Okay, so that's going to wrap it up for this video. I hope you learned something and I hope you enjoyed your time doing so. If you'd like to express that, you can like the video, leave a comment below, or subscribe if you haven't already. If you'd like to support more of these video lessons, please do consider checking out our Patreon page. Also included on the screen right now are, of course, a bunch of links on where to find and follow us elsewhere online. Lastly, check out our Discord server. We've got a community of hundreds of so if you're looking for somebody to voice chat with just to practice speaking Japanese, or if you just want to talk about anime or music or manga. And with that, see you next time.